Okay, everyone wants to stay informed, but time is tight. So let's just cut to the chase. We're diving deep into President Trump's recent announcement, those reciprocal tariffs from April 2nd. We've gone through a lot of the political news research, the analysis, to pull out the really crucial bits and what it all might mean.
Exactly. So first off, April 5th, that's when a baseline 10% tariff kicks in. It hits, well, almost all imports coming into the U.S. Then, just a few days later, April 9th, it gets more specific. Higher tariffs targeting countries that sell way more to the U.S. than they buy from us, those with big trade surpluses.
Right, the trade surplus thing. So who's specifically in the crosshairs here?
Well, China's facing a big one. It's an additional 34% on top of the roughly 20% already in place for many goods. So yeah, potentially 54% total.
Wow.
Then you've got the EU at 20%, Japan 24%, Taiwan 32%, South Korea 25%, and Vietnam, they're looking at 46%.
46%. Oof. And the administration's framing this as reciprocal. They even announced it on, Liberation Day?
That's right.
But the immediate reaction wasn't exactly celebratory. Global markets took a nosedive pretty much instantly.
Yeah, and it's interesting that reciprocal framing. Some analysis points out that the U.S. average tariff rates are actually, quite low compared to many countries. So this isn't strictly mirroring what others do. It's more of a broad, significant increase. And the market reaction, it really just highlights the massive uncertainty this injects into the global economy.
No kidding. And domestically, it's already causing a stir, right? The Senate even voted.
Yes, 51-48 on a resolution specifically trying to block potential tariffs on Canada. And interestingly, that included some Republican senators voting against the administration's potential move.
So a split even within the Republican Party. You've got some, like Senator Mullen, apparently saying it's, necessary short-term pain.
Right.
While others, like Senator Loomis, seemed a bit more cautious, calling the approach pretty responsibly, which sounds like faint praise, maybe.
It could be interpreted that way. It definitely shows there isn't lockstep agreement.
And on the other side,
Yeah.
Democrats.
Pretty unified criticism so far. Senator Schumer called it a huge tax on American families almost immediately.
That's the standard argument that consumers end up paying.
Exactly. The economic thinking is that importers pay the tariff, but they often pass that cost along in the form of higher prices.
Though early polling, according to AP and ORC, doesn't really show a clear political winner or loser on this just yet. Still early days, I guess.
Very early. But internationally, the reaction has been anything but muted. It's been sharp.
Yeah, like what?
Well, the EU Commission President von der Leyen called it a major blow. Germany's Chancellor Scholz said it was fundamentally wrong, and they're already planning countermeasures.
Countermeasures. Okay, so retaliation.
Pretty much explicitly. China also voiced firm opposition and predictably vowed countermeasures of their own. Japan expressed extreme disappointment and regret.
What about our closer partners? Canada.
Their finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, wasn't it? Oh, Mark Carney, I think. Anyway, promised Canada would fight. Brazil is rejecting the reciprocal label outright. Even Ireland called it deeply regrettable. Australia said there's no basis in logic. And Norway is even questioning if it violates NABIT principles somehow.
Wow. Okay, so widespread condemnation. It really sounds like the potential for escalation is high.
Extremely high. When you have this many major trading partners signaling they will retaliate, it sets the stage for a potential tit-for-tat trade war.
Which brings us to the economic impact. Beyond the stock market dip, what are the big concerns? You mentioned inflation.
Inflation is definitely top of the list. Think about the automotive sector. There were already tariffs on some imported cars and parts. This will likely exacerbate that, meaning higher car prices.
And tech, I imagine, with China and Taiwan on the list.
Absolutely. Computers, phones, all sorts of electronics could get more expensive. And just general retail, anything imported, really. Retailers face higher costs, and the question is how much gets passed on to consumers versus how much they absorb.
And then there's the other side, retaliation against U.S. exports.
Exactly. U.S. agriculture is always vulnerable here. Farmers rely heavily on exports, and other countries often target agricultural goods with retaliatory tariffs. So the overall fear is, yes, a potential slowdown, maybe even a recession, both in the U.S. and globally.
Okay, let's talk legality for a second. How is the administration justifying this legally?
They're citing the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, and the National Emergencies Act. These grant the president pretty broad powers during declared national emergencies.
But is it legally sound? Are challenges expected?
Oh, definitely. Challenges are almost certain. They'll likely argue the president is exceeding the authority granted by Congress under IEPA and potentially raise the non-delegation doctrine, the idea that Congress can't just give away its legislative power, like setting taxes or tariffs, to the executive branch entirely.
Wasn't there also some memo about trying to limit court challenges?
Yeah, a Rubio memo surfaced discussing a foreign affairs functions exception to the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA. The idea being that maybe courts shouldn't review these actions as closely because they relate to foreign policy.
Hmm. Have past tariff challenges succeeded?
Historically, courts have often deferred to the president on trade and foreign affairs, so the government has usually won these fights. But the scale here and the Senate pushback might make this round different. We'll see.
Okay, final area, overall international trade relations. USMCA, the deal with Canada and Mexico. Does it blow that up?
Well, they were initially exempted from some earlier tariffs, but these new broad ones, even with potential carve-outs maybe, still add significant strain. Trust is eroded.
And the global picture. Trade wars, WTO.
Like we said, the risk of a broader trade war is very real, given the vows of countermeasures. You can expect a flurry of cases brought to the World Trade Organization's dispute settlement system, though that system itself has faced challenges.
And
They're almost certainly going to accelerate plans to diversify their supply chains, move manufacturing out of targeted countries if possible, find alternative suppliers. This just adds fuel to that fire.
So wrapping this up, the key takeaway seems to be
Mm-hmm.
these are huge sweeping tariffs, not minor adjustments, and they have potentially massive consequences across the board, economic, political, domestic, international. It's complex.
It really is. And maybe the final thought to leave folks with is, beyond just the price of goods or stock market jitters, how might this fundamentally shift the global balance of power? How does it change the way countries cooperate or don't cooperate long term? That's the bigger picture to chew on.